Good evening. Thank you for joining Montgomery County Planning Department and Friends of White Flint for an online public meeting. Tonight, we will introduce the Advancing the Pike District project. I'm Carrie Sanders, the Division Chief in the Montgomery County Planning Department. We hope that everyone is staying healthy and safe during this challenging time, and we thank you for joining us tonight. I'm very excited about this project. It seeks to expedite the implementation of the White Flint Sector Plan and help create walkable, safe, mixed-use districts in the Pike District. After our presentation, we will be opening up the meeting to a question and answer session that will be handled through our chat feature. This meeting is being streamed online and will be posted to the project webpage following the event. And now I'd like to introduce Councilmember Andrew Friedson, who will be saying a few words to kick off the meeting.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you to Walker and for the rest of the team at Montgomery Planning for all of your work in putting this event together and for allowing me to join you tonight. I am really excited about this effort and this particular meeting talking about the Pike District, which I believe not only is it critical to the surrounding community around the Pike District, but I think advancing the Pike District really is about advancing the economic potential and economic development efforts of Montgomery County and the region more broadly. We've been really busy at the council with COVID mitigation, our FY21 budget conversation, and a lot of it has been focused on how we address those issues today. But this particular event is so important because it's really about how we plant the seeds today for what the future looks like in Montgomery County and for the Pike District. And that's exactly what this is about. That's exactly what we need to be focusing on. And I'm really excited to continue these conversations and to realize the full potential of this community and realize the full potential of the sector plans that everybody has bought into so significantly. So many people have been working on various aspects of this, property owners and planning staff, Department of Transportation, permitting services, Ken Hartman and Derek Harrigan from the Regional Services Center, the White Flint Downtown Committee, Friends of White Flint, and we have Chris Warner, who's been working on our placemaking efforts. And it's really true when people say that it takes a village, and we have a village, and we are building a place for people to come to and share in that village, and it's really a positive to move forward. I also think it's important to recognize some of the real gains that we've made. I know we haven't quite met the potential that we all know we're capable of in the Pike District, and that's what this conversation is really about. But I think it's important to take a moment to realize that we really have seen some real positives of what potential is out there and what we're capable of. The placemaking efforts that Chris Warner and others are working on. We had $60,000 in this budget that we added in order to increase those efforts. We are continuing to focus on 355 BRT, which is the real spine of what will create the urban community that we desperately need and that we are looking to build. The engineering moving forward in the next 3 years of the capital budget, and looking forward to moving that forward. On Vision Zero, we're making pedestrian improvements with fixing the channelized
Thank you so much, Councilmember Friedson. We greatly appreciate your support for this initiative. My name is Walker Freer. I'm a transportation planner with the Planning Department and the project manager for the Advancing the Pike District initiative. So this meeting will really serve as an overview of the Advancing the Pike District project and introduce our engagement tools. You'll hear brief presentations from Friends of White Flint, the Pike District rebranding campaign, and the Montgomery Planning project team. We encourage you to submit your comments and questions at any time in the Q&A section on the right side of your screen. This may appear automatically for some of you. Others may need to click on the chat icon highlighted on this slide. We also encourage you to complete our 2-minute survey to help us identify short-term activation and safety priorities for White Flint. We're sharing the link in the Q&A section now. Please complete and we'll share the results at the end of tonight's meeting. And now I'd like to introduce Amy Ginsberg with the Friends of White Flint.
Thanks. It's great to be here. So the White Flint area is actually divided into 2 areas, White Flint 1 and White Flint 2. And they each had their own sector plans with similar purposes. And the Pike District is really the urban heart of the White Flint area. Next slide, please. So the vision for the Pike District, a walkable, bikeable, transit-friendly community with sustainable growth and less traffic congestion. And all of that with a redevelopment will bring millions in new tax revenue, which the county absolutely needs. Imagine a vibrant neighborhood of mixed-use developments on both sides of a rejuvenated Rockville Pike, kind of like a Champs-Élysées, that features broad tree-lined sidewalks, transit, bike lanes, and still 3 lanes of traffic each way. Next slide. So who is Friends of White Flint? We are a nonprofit composed of businesses, property owners, and residents. And we're an advocate and a cheerleader for the White Flint Pike District area. One of the things we do really well is keeping the community informed about everything that's happening in this area. We have a weekly e-newsletter. We have a blog that we do every day on our website. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. And we have community meetings like this one. So I very much hope you will follow us on social media and sign up for our weekly newsletter. It really is just 1 time a week. Next slide. So we're very excited about what we've achieved. And really, the reason we've been so successful is that we bring property owners, businesses, and residents, people who often are on opposite sides of the table. We bring them together and we work to transform our community into a vision of a walkable, vibrant neighborhood. We have, with MCDOT, newly painted crosswalks on side streets, and with SHA across Rockville Pike. New mid-block crosswalks on Marinelli Road and Nicholson Lane. And we have an automatic walk signal at Marinelli and Rockville Pike. It took us 9 months of talking with SHA, but eventually they put an automatic walk signal in what is the busiest intersection outside of a central business district here in Montgomery County. We've advocated for some of the things that Councilmember Friedson has talked about, bus rapid transit, a revitalized Wall Park. Wall Park is the park near the Aquatic Center. Right now it's mostly a parking lot, but the plan is to rip up that parking lot and then build a garage behind the swim center. So we have this amazing green space in our neighborhood. Pedestrian improvements, a reopened Woodward High School so that we can hopefully eliminate the moratorium, bike lanes, and the elimination of the dreaded Grosvenor turnaround. We've held candidate forums for District 1 and county executive candidates. And again, we keep the community informed and we're a respected voice of the community. By fostering productive conversations with developers, businesses, and residents, we make it work, and I hope you'll join us. Thanks. And now I'd like to invite Atul Sharma to speak.
I think I'm going to step back in quickly because I got kicked off before. Thank you, Amy, for highlighting some of the successes that I was trying to highlight, and appreciate all your advocacy. I also wanted to note Pete Fosselman as well, who's working on behalf of the county on some of these major improvements. But we've had some real positives, as you just mentioned. We also have in this recent budget restoring funding and adding funding to the second White Flint Metro entrance, which is key to ensuring the realization of the infrastructure as part of this plan, which is a major issue, and the Western Workaround, which that project has begun, and that work is being as we speak, and creating the urban, livable, walkable street grid that is required in order to create the type of place that the Pike District can be, and we all want to make sure that the Pike District will be. Goes without saying that this is a really tough time for our economy. There is a real amount of uncertainty with how we move forward, and that's really what makes this work as important, if not more important than it ever has been. We need everybody to be working together, from the Economic Development Corporation to property owners to residents to government and the planning staff and everybody in between, to make sure that we are moving this plan forward, that we are realizing the vision that we have bought into. I am more confident than ever that our community is ripe and ready to come out of these challenges stronger than ever. And I firmly believe that that is only possible and will only happen if we realize the full potential of the Pike District. So I am extremely proud to represent this community, extremely excited about what potential we have in our community, and look forward to the continued work of the planning staff, of groups and organizations like Friends of White Flint, and all of the relevant stakeholders who are all working together to make sure that we realize this vision together. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Atul Sharma, and I'm an urban designer and a master planner with the Montgomery County Planning Department. We are very excited to be with you here today for the kickoff of our project. We would have loved to do this in the community on the ground, but circumstances are unprecedented, as we've heard from Councilmember Friedson. And so we are still nonetheless moving ahead with this important project and launching this digitally today. I hope everyone is safe and healthy through these unprecedented times. And we are really looking forward to working with you online through the coming months. And as soon as we are able to safely reopen our communities, get down onto the ground and meet with you all. As Amy mentioned, there's a lot of great planning work that has already been put on the ground in White Flint in the Pike District. So we are excited to build on that foundation of the sector plans that are already approved and adopted, and launch this initiative that we are calling Advancing the Pike District. This will be an implementation-focused initiative. We believe that the fundamentals in the White Flint Sector Plan are very strong and require our continued long-term support and investment. We are not going to be re-questioning and revising those fundamentals in this process. Instead, we will be focusing on short and medium-term opportunities that we think we can put on the ground in the next 2 to 5 years, things that will make the area more walkable, attract new projects and jobs to the area, and create wonderful streets and great spaces where the community can once again come out and gather while maintaining social distancing and other health policies as they are mandated in the coming weeks and months. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the foundation of our work will really be the 2010 White Flint Sector Plan, and that is a bold vision. This vision was created in working with many of you that are on this call today and the community, and it really looks at an amazing transformation that is to be achieved in the area over the coming decades. Next slide, please. So there are 3 big parts of the bold vision that the sector plan has created. Number 1 is transforming Rockville Pike from a car-oriented street into a multimodal boulevard serviced by BRT and the adjoining Red Line. Number 2 is the creation of a walkable grid of streets through parking lots and existing low-intensity uses. And number 3 is the creation of high-density mixed-use development in close proximity to transit, so people can live and work here while still being able to move around using transit and not relying on cars. All these are strong fundamentals that we think are as applicable today as they were in 2010 when the plan was adopted, and we really will be building on these fundamentals and trying to achieve short-term gains as we come out of this pandemic. Next slide, please. A lot has happened in White Flint over the past 10 to 15 years. We've seen a lot of great mixed-use developments occur and be implemented. Places like Noby Market, Pike and Rose, and the town center on the WMATA side by Elcor. However, there are still challenges that exist in the plan area today. For one, this area doesn't feel and operate like one big, great urban neighborhood. And we think there might be some improvements we can make to the streets and the spaces here and provide some extra options for circulation and mobility that will help sort of connect these destinations in a better way. Next slide, please. Another great opportunity that has presented itself over the past couple of years has been the latest developments on the WMATA site. WMATA has a joint development agreement with the developer Elcor that they used as a joint development partnership to develop many buildings on their site right on top of the metro station. There are currently 2 residential towers. One of them has a grocery store in it, and they're building a 3rd building. However, WMATA's development agreement with their development partner has expired, and they are looking at the next chapter in the life of the site. And we think that presents a great opportunity for us to work with WMATA in crafting a vision for this site that will really attract a strong, transformative, large-scale development on this site that will really begin to form the heart of this community right on top of a metro station. Next slide, please. So to sum up at a very high level, I think there are 3 main things that we are trying to achieve with this implementation-oriented initiative. Number 1 is to make it safe and enjoyable to walk, bike, and take transit in the Pike District. We want to make sure that an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old can really feel safe and comfortable to walk within destinations within the Pike District. Next slide, please. Number 2 is to make sure that all these destinations that are being created through private and public development, whether it's the conference center or a place like Pike and Rose, they're really well connected and tied together and contribute to a common identity and a brand for the Pike District that we can then leverage to attract more development. Next slide, please. And number 3 is that we really want to work with WMATA and other large property owners within the core of the Pike District to make sure that we are working hand in hand with them to create a very streamlined development approval process that will enable them to go out into the marketplace and attract new development, bring new residents and jobs to the Pike District. So these are sort of 3 goals for this initiative. You'll be hearing a lot more through the course of the evening about the details of the types of efforts we're undertaking. At this point, I would want to turn it over to Chris Warner from Meyer Warner, who's been working on branding and placemaking for the Pike District. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to the Q&A at the end. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks, Atul. My name is Chris Warner. I'm with Meyer and Warner Public Relations. Our agency has the contract with Montgomery County to do the branding and marketing of the Pike District. Our focus is North Bethesda's urban core, also known as White Flint 1 and White Flint 2. And our mission is to help to establish an identity and create awareness among the residents and the workers and the business and visitors who come to this district. Next slide. We launched our program a year ago with a 4-point strategy, and that was to evolve the assets that we were provided to grow awareness among the current stakeholders, including the property owners, and to engage the existing base that is in the Pike District, but also to attract the prospective new audiences, and whether that is companies, residents, or visitors. Next slide. So this past year, we've made a lot of progress. We look to support economic development, and we've developed some fresh messaging around that. We revamped our digital platforms, which include our website and social media and an email program. We have continuously been engaged with the stakeholders, the property owners that are in place today, and some landowners who have development plans in the works. We also have met with WMATA a number of times about engaging them and working on programming, and possibly for the current site, but while it's not developed. We've been in contact with the council member and other government agencies, Park and Planning, as well as the Chamber. We've hosted a number of pop-up activations and sponsorships. We've also continuously have supported local businesses. We have a grassroots effort to connect with all of those businesses. And we've made some progress on placemaking. We installed some light pole banners on the WMATA lights on Rockville Pike. We installed a banner, and we've made really good progress on installing a mural at the Metro. Next slide. Our digital platform includes a website, which is pikedistrict.org. We have a very interactive dining and shopping directory. There's search capabilities. We have an event calendar where we post events at Strathmore or AMP, but also at individual businesses, community events. We post news. We have lots of information on transportation and recreational options, information on new development, and links to economic development. Our social media includes Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we also have, like I said, an email program where we do a monthly newsletter. We initiated a program called Weekend in the Pike District, and we also do some campaigns. Our digital audiences, we have about 1,400 monthly active users coming onto our site. We have more than 1,500 email subscribers, more than 1,100 Facebook followers, and nearly 800 Instagram and Twitter followers, and those numbers go up just about every week. Next slide. Like I said, we've participated in several community events with sponsorships like the Pikes Peak, Bike to Work Day, Walk and Ride. We've hosted a number of pop-up happy hours and lobby breakfast. We've done some activation at the Metro where we've handed out ice cream and cookies. We had 2 food truck programs, one over by the Metro and one on Executive Boulevard. And we've also connected with the apartment communities and provided them welcome gift bags for their new residents. Next slide. Just here's some imagery of our activations and our branded materials. Next slide. Here's our banner. It's somewhat small, but you can see the light pole banners on Rockville Pike. And lastly, many of our plans were interrupted by COVID, but we were able to quickly shift our focus to supporting the businesses in the Pike District. We put links on our homepage that listed the businesses that were open, whether or not they were doing takeout and delivery, selling gift cards. We've been in contact with them a lot to get some information so that we could promote them on our social platforms and through our newsletter. We've seen a surge in traffic on our digital platforms, and we've capitalized on that by engaging them with some weekly trivia and some gift card promotions. And we coordinated with other organizations who are also supporting the local business community. We will continue this high level of support as long as we're in the situation that we're in. But we hope that in the coming months, we'll be able to expand our support with some additional marketing initiatives. I can now turn it over to Walker, or turn it back to Walker.
Thank you, Chris, for that overview. We're really excited to be working with the Pike District. They're doing a lot of great things, as we saw. So just a quick reminder to go ahead and complete the 2-minute community survey if you haven't already. The survey link is posted here on screen. We'll also share the link in the Q&A section. We'll close the survey in about 5 to 10 minutes to process the results. And then at the end of the meeting tonight, we will share those results with the group. Next slide, please. So we're thrilled to be working with a number of committed partners on this initiative, and we're coordinating with several ongoing county efforts that I'll highlight here. Since this project's inception, as Chris noted, we've worked closely with the county and with Meyer Warner to promote the Pike District rebrand. As Atul mentioned, we're actively coordinating with WMATA to reimagine future development at their site at the White Flint Metro Station. Vision Zero is also a primary focus of this initiative. Montgomery County is one of the first counties in the United States to initiate a Vision Zero plan. Vision Zero is a policy to eliminate severe and fatal traffic collisions. We hope to achieve this in the county by 2030. As part of the Flash Bus Rapid Transit Network, our partners at the Montgomery County Department of Transportation are also currently analyzing alternatives for BRT service on Rockville Pike. Bus Rapid Transit is frequent bus service that often operates in dedicated lanes and is generally a higher level of service than standard routes that are operating on Rockville Pike today. Additionally, our friends at the Montgomery Parks Department maintain several facilities in White Flint and is opening the Josiah Henson Museum and Park on Old Georgetown Road in December of 2020. Next slide, please. So the Advancing the Pike District will focus on 3 core elements: mobility and circulation, economic development and implementation strategies, and urban design and placemaking. Standalone deliverables will be produced and released over the course of these projects related to each of these elements, and we really hope that we can build momentum and provide actionable solutions that are usable for our partner agencies in the county in general. Next slide. So last fall, Planning Department staff assessed pedestrian conditions in White Flint by walking between major destinations and documenting existing conditions, unsafe segments, and challenges that impede walking. This walkability analysis prioritized short, medium, and long-term recommendations for improving unsafe and uncomfortable walking conditions in White Flint. And I'm glad to say that several of these improvements are already being addressed. The county executive's 2021 recommended budget includes approximately $3 million to fund access improvements to the White Flint Metro Station, including removing the channelized right turns at the intersection of Rockville Pike and Old Georgetown Road, as illustrated in the top right image. This will shorten the crossing distance for pedestrians and really reduce conflict with turning vehicles. Additionally, MCDOT is constructing a buffer between the sidewalk and the Metro Station along Rockville Pike, and this will safely separate pedestrians from fast-moving traffic. Also included is preliminary design funding for the extension of Chapman Avenue, connecting Old Georgetown Road and Marinelli Road. So we're extremely excited about these improvements. Next slide, please. When the White Flint Sector Plan was adopted in 2010, Vision Zero was not a widely accepted policy in the United States. So as part of this initiative, the Planning Department is conducting a pedestrian level of comfort analysis for White Flint and will apply Vision Zero principles. So this analysis will quantify and score how comfortable people feel when they walk in certain traffic conditions based on sidewalk width, proximity to traffic, crossing facilities, and traffic speeds. An example of this analysis is posted on screen here. This is from downtown Bethesda. The blue lines represent very comfortable sidewalk connections with red and orange representing segments that should be improved. So ultimately, this analysis will identify where sidewalk improvements can increase pedestrian accessibility, provide greater connections to adjacent neighborhoods, and really help the Planning Department and MCDOT prioritize our infrastructure investments. Next slide, please. So mobility options have also evolved significantly since 2010 with the expansion of ride hailing such as Uber and Lyft, the advent of bike share and e-scooters. So this initiative will take a fresh look at transportation options and circulation conditions in White Flint. We'll consider the impact of alternative transportation services such as micromobility, on-demand transit, fixed route circulators, and even autonomous shuttles, as well as interim options for bus rapid transit on Rockville Pike. So 2 examples are pictured here. On the left, MCDOT began operating Ride on Flex, an on-demand bus pilot, last summer in Rockville, Glenmont, and Wheaton. And on the right, the Maryland Department of Transportation is also piloting an autonomous shuttle service at National Harbor in Prince George's County. So we're excited to see what possibilities could be applicable in White Flint, and we'll certainly be looking into this as the study progresses. And now I'll pass it along to Todd Foley-King, who will discuss the initiative's economic development component.
Thank you, Walker. For the economic development analysis, we are going to look at the progress that has been made since the 2010 plan was approved towards the attainment of the vision in that plan. Firstly, by understanding what has occurred to date, what development has happened, and what obstacles are hindering further development. Conducting case studies of how similar districts with high quality transit access have transformed their real estate markets and attracted development of the type and density that we envision here in the Pike District. And then based on that, recommend policies, actions, and investments for Montgomery County that can address those challenges and opportunities that we find. The following on the next couple slides show some of the initial findings from this review of the progress that's been made in development since 2010. What we're showing here on this first slide is the development of multifamily, mostly apartments, since 2010. And one positive is that the pace of development increased dramatically after the plan was approved. From 665 apartments built between 2000 and 2010, that increased to almost 2,000 units between 2000 and 2020, so a substantial increase. However, as shown by the bubbles on the map, which correspond to the level of development on each property, it was only on 3 projects that we actually saw development. Those being Pike and Rose, the North Bethesda Town Center, and the North Bethesda Market. So while it was a good amount of development on those 3 projects, there are still quite a lot of properties that did not move forward with any development since the plan was approved. And furthermore, the level of development fell short of the pace that we would hope to see in order to build out the plan, which calls for ultimately almost 14,000 additional residential units in this area. And so the key question we're facing as a team is really how do we start to increase that pace of development and really fulfill that plan. Next slide, please. This slide shows the same data, but now for commercial development. So everything other than the multifamily market. And again, we see as a positive sign a significant increase in the pace of development from the prior decade after that plan was approved in 2010, from 420,000 square feet built between 2000 and 2010 up to 1.4 million square feet. So again, a dramatic increase, but also on just those same 3 projects as we saw development for multifamily, and again falling short of the pace that we would hope to see from the plan, which calls for eventually 6.6 million square feet of additional development. So again, this key question of how do we increase that pace? The slide here brings demonstrates the significant potential for new growth here in the Pike District, which again is an area with high quality transit access to the job centers in Bethesda and downtown BC, and so precisely the place where we would hope to see development here in the county. And what it shows is the amount of building area permitted by the zoning code that each of the properties is using. So if the property is using its full allotment per the zoning code, it would show up in green. But what you can see is that most of the properties are in red and orange, indicating that they're using less than 25% of the total building area that is allowed per the zoning code, and really demonstrates that there is quite a bit of this district that could still build out at much higher intensities in keeping with the vision from 2010. Next slide. Back one, please. Thank you. And so the question that we have as a team, and what we're now looking into answering, is what might the county be able to do to increase the pace of development to fulfill that vision from that plan? Some of those options potentially might include investments that change the perception of this area and the market to attract more development, perhaps in the lines of using temporary uses in vacant properties to bring people to the Pike District so that they can see what's happening here. Perhaps programming in some of the open spaces to make it a more active area, potentially permanent streetscape improvements like the type seen here, or potentially other investments that we haven't come up with yet as a team, symbolized by that question mark there. So this is what the team is looking at from the perspective of economic development, and we very much look forward to continuing this conversation with the public as we go through these options. Next, my colleague Natasha Fahim will discuss issues related to the urban design of the area.
Thank you so much, Todd. I'm Natasha Fahim, Urban Designer in Planning Department. I'm very excited to be part of this initiative, and would like to thank all of you who join us this evening to the virtual kickoff meeting. We hope to get your support and engagement through this initiative. As you see on a slide, the 34-acre metro site is still very underdeveloped. There are 2 residential towers and grocery store on the northeast corner on the site, as well as another residential building that is under construction, shown in the yellow bubble, an office building and a metro garage. That's all the development that this site has got so far. As my colleagues Atul mentioned earlier, the joint development agreement for this site has sunsetted back in 2018, and this is one of the reason that we are working with WMATA to update the design guidance for this site to ensure the flexibility to attract the transformative development to this site while we are advancing the overall vision for the sector plan. In our urban design effort, we will evaluate the existing development plans and current zoning standards, so we can provide a clear path to WMATA by streamlining the regulatory review for the future of this site. We will also collaborate with WMATA to explore the ideas for the interim uses that could place for this site for like 2 to 10 years. While we are creating revenues, we also activating the site in the interim. Next slide, please. Placemaking. Planning department has been using placemaking as one of the public engagement strategy that improves the neighborhood where we are planning for the future. It also gives people a taste of what the changes could look like in a long term without spending fortune. So on the placemaking effort, we will partner with Better Block Foundation, who has helped us through the Randolph Hill placemaking back in 2018, as well as the Burtonsville placemaking last fall. Both of these projects has been successful temporary activation project, and this is still being used by the community today. So our focus for the Pike District placemaking will be enhancing the connectivity between the sub-districts by replicating the secondary street grids that has been proposed by sector plan, and also reinforcing the Pike District brand. Next slide, please. So through our placemaking event, we will closely coordinate this effort with Pike District rebranding campaign, as well as the key property owners, counties and state agencies, community leaders, and local artists. Pike District placemaking was originally planned to be placed in fall 2020, but unfortunately we had to postpone it to spring of 2021 due to the current pandemic situation and for the safety of our communities. We hope that you can participate in this placemaking event in early next year. Next slide. As you might notice, there is no unified guidance on a streetscape design today in Pike District, and Pike District desperately is in need of providing more direction on the lighting, landscaping, furniture, and other streetscape amenities. We will work with property owners and county stakeholders to identify inadequate streetscape components that they are obstacle to achieving the walkable street network and a vibrant public spaces in Pike District. By coordinating with the Pike District rebranding effort and other county agencies, we will evaluate the creation of the streetscape guidance through this initiative. Also, we will explore the short-term improvement to activate the streetscape, similar to what you see on the image on the bottom right. Some on-street parking can be converted into the outdoor seating for the restaurant, which can be helpful for activating the streetscape while we are practicing the social distancing in our current situation. Now I would like to take it back to Walker to explain more about our public outreach and engagement strategies through the initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. This is our first meeting for this initiative, and we've significantly shifted our outreach and engagement strategies due to the ongoing pandemic, focusing primarily on online engagement. So our engagement goal for this project is to better understand challenges encountered by people that live and work in the Pike District and identify short-term improvements to advance the development and livability of the area. So public feedback will help determine transportation and urban design recommendations, and will also help refine the direction of the Better Block event scheduled for spring 2021. So we plan to engage community members using online surveys, an e-newsletter, and the React map. Next slide, please. So the React map is an interactive online map that allows you to make comments, engage with other community members, and provide feedback on the White Flint community. This screenshot is from our 2019 Aspen Hill Vision Zero study and gives a preview of the React Maps functionality. So, for example, use the hashtag #FixIt, which is shown in orange, love it, which is shown in green, or need it, which is shown in blue, to tell us what you love about the community, what needs fixing, or what is missing. The React map for White Flint is now live, and we'll share the link in the Q&A section. We encourage you to comment throughout the length of this project. Next slide, please. You can also join our e-newsletter to receive updates and final reports associated with this project. Visit the link in the Q&A section now to sign up. We'll try to send this out on a monthly basis and keep you up to date on everything that's happening with the Advancing the Pike District. Next slide, please. So now we want to provide some time to answer your questions. We solicited several questions in advance of the meeting through the project website. So these questions on screen were submitted by community members. And so now we're just going to take the opportunity to answer these collectively as a staff. So this first question, which I'll have Todd Foley-King answer, what type of housing is planned? Rental apartments, condos, townhomes, and when will these projects be completed?
Thank you, Walker. Right now, well, since 2000, all of the plans, development plans for the White Flint area that have included housing have included rental apartment and condo style housing. None of the plans have included townhomes or single family housing. I will note that may be changing. There is just one project that just recently came in and is just entering the process that may include some townhomes. That's still a very preliminary plan. There are 7 properties in the White Flint area that have approved site plans, which means that they could start construction at any time if they get their building permits approved by the building department. I think that some of them have had that site plan approved for a number of years, which gives some indication to some of the challenges that developers might be having getting projects to be financially feasible. The current economic conditions, of course, making that even harder. So I think it's a little bit difficult to say exactly when those projects might move forward, particularly given what we're seeing happening really over the past couple months. it's a question that I think a lot of people would like to have answered. So I'd say there are a lot of projects in the pipeline, but a few of them have not been moving forward, and that's something our team is trying to figure out as to how we can get development to move forward more quickly.
Great, thank you, Todd. So this next question, is there a plan to add a northern entrance to the White Flint Metro Station? Yes, constructing a northern entrance to the White Flint Metro Station is recommended in the White Flint Sector Plan. WMATA completed a feasibility study in November 2019, which estimates the construction cost for the preferred alternative at approximately $35 million. Recently, the County Council did include approximately $17 million in the county's capital improvements program to fund engineering and construction for the northern entrance over the next 6 years. And for this next question, I'll ask Natasha Fahim to provide an answer for our staff. How can we change Rockville Pike to a safe multimodal boulevard without costly infrastructure improvements? What short-term improvements can be made?
Thank you, Walker. So one of the bold vision for the sector plan was transforming the Rockville Pike from the suburban commercial strip highway into the Grand Boulevard. As Walker mentioned in our presentation, through the walkability analysis that conducted by Planning Department back in last fall, County Executive has allocated some funds to create a green buffer between the sidewalk and traveling lane in some portion of the Rockville Pike, as well as closing off the hot right turn in intersection of Old Georgetown Road and Rockville Pike. Hopefully, through our initiative and placemaking efforts, we will witness more of this short-term solution to achieve the vision of the sector plan. Solutions such as providing on-street parking in off-peak hours or temporary landscaping, which both of these solutions can create a better experience for pedestrians along the Rockville Pike. Thanks.
Thank you, Natasha. So the next question, is the planning department considering burying electric or utility lines in White Flint? And for this, I'll have Atul Sharma answer.
Thank you, Walker. That's a great question. Burying electric and utility lines definitely has a lot of benefits. It makes the streets look better. It makes it easier for firefighters to access buildings. And it also makes the power and utility connections safer and more reliable during times of inclement weather. Having said that, there is a lot of cost involved with burying the utilities. Right now, the planning department advocates for burying utilities on a case-by-case basis as properties develop. If we go through this initiative and find that this is a high priority for local businesses and area residents and property owners, we can certainly try to look at a more district-wide strategy to tackle some of this. But I think we'll have to definitely hear more from the community and weigh this against other needs and desires that people might have. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you, Atul. So the next question, are there plans to build a pedestrian bridge across the CSX tracks to connect White Flint to Randolph Hills? Yes, the 2018 Bicycle Master Plan recommends a bike pedestrian bridge over the CSX railroad tracks connecting Nicholson Court to Wyaconda Road south of the Randolph Hills Shopping Center. While this project is not funded in the county's current capital improvement program, as part of the Advancing the Pike District project, we're evaluating how to improve connectivity from adjacent residential neighborhoods to White Flint's core and the metro station, and this will definitely be a focus of this effort. And our final question will be to Natasha Fahim. Will there be opportunities for local art organizations to be engaged in placemaking?
Thank you, Walker. Yes, through our placemaking effort, Planning Department and Better Block Foundation have always been reached out to community leaders, local activists, and as well as local artists for their support and inspiration. Maya Warner, the marketing company who is facilitating the Pike District rebranding effort, have already engaged some local artists, and we will coordinate in this effort with them. And I'm sure it will be a lot of opportunities for the local artists artists and arts organization to get involved and make an impact on their communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. So right now, we'd ask if you have any questions that you'd like answered, please continue to submit them in the Q&A section. We've been consolidating questions that have come in thus far, and what I will attempt to do relatively on the fly is to distribute those to our staff members. So if for whatever reason we don't get to your question, please do send me an email. My contact information will be provided at the end of this meeting. And right now we'll take some time to run through as many questions as we can before we transition to reviewing the survey results. So the first question that we received, and this question will be for Todd Foley-King, aside from essential businesses, what other businesses will be needed to fulfill the needs of residents in this area?
Thank you, Walker. The plan build out envisioning 14,000 additional units does definitely indicate that there would be quite an expansion of the number of businesses that would serve that neighborhood. I think we would expect to see the types of retail that you find in vibrant neighborhoods around Montgomery County that have these levels of density. Generally, like Bethesda, like Silver Spring, like Friendship Heights, quite a bit of that being retail of all types and manner. I'd say that the retail sector right now is in quite a bit of transition for obvious reasons, and so we don't really know exactly what it'll look like in 5 or much less 10 years. But that we do very much hope that there will be some degree of innovation in that sector, and that we'll start to see some new types of retail uses that surprise and improve the quality of life here in Montgomery County and across the nation.
Great, thank you so much. So this next question, which I'll direct to Carrie Sanders. The Lux Manor community has and continues to sustain significant stormwater management issues as a result of the redevelopment of Pike and Rose. How does the county plan to address these ongoing concerns?
Thank you, Walker. Wanted to make sure that I noted that there is an active project called Lux Manor Stream Restoration Project under the Department of Environmental Protection that seeks to address some of these stream restoration issues and the stream that was mentioned in the question. That project is currently in the design phase, which means that there's still some work to be done until we get to construction. Looks like the project cost is approximately $4.8 million in cost. So I understand that it is in the design phase and it is moving forward. But at this stage, it would still be a few years out until that project likely is completed. Happy to connect the person asking the question with the project manager of that project at the Department of Environmental Protection. We can certainly follow up with you if you provide us with your contact info to make sure you can get even more information if you need to. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. So our next question, the 355 BRT, bus rapid transit, is very expensive and will take many years. How is the county going to pay for it? How can transit along the corridor be improved in the meantime? So one way to look at the funding structure is that it's really going to come from multiple partners. A current example is the bus rapid transit system that the county is opening later this spring on Route US 29. So the funding there was approximately $30 million required, and the federal funding is accounting for about $10 million of that. Approximately $10 million is being provided by the Maryland Department of Transportation, and another $10 million is coming from local funding sources such as GO bonds. So in reality, the funding is going to be segmented from several different larger state, local, and federal sources. But it is a concern and something that needs to be addressed. For high quality bus rapid transit, preferably you would operate in the median. which separates buses from cars. So this is definitely something that we need to consider, and we'll work closely with MCDOT as they continue on their facility planning for this corridor. So for the next question, which I'll direct to Atul, to become truly urban, the Pike District needs to transform its strip malls. Are there plans to redevelop, and how can that be accelerated?
Thank you, Walker. I think that's a very important question, and the transformation of the strip malls is one of the central requirements for turning this area from a car-oriented environment to a mixed-use pedestrian-oriented place. What I would say about that is that that transformation is already occurring as we speak. If you looked at Pike and Rose, where Pike and Rose is today, if you looked at that site about 5 years ago, as little as 5 years ago, there were large parts of it which were dedicated to parking, and that property used to be a strip shopping center. What I would say is that that is a successful demonstration of that transformation that is required. There are other projects all along the Pike, in the Pike District, that have approvals from the planning department to achieve similar transformations. In doing our part, and again, since this is an initiative focused on the short term, we are working with property owners to see how they can even do smaller improvements to make these sites more active. So if some of you went to the beach, for example, in Pike and Rose and spent time over the past 2 summers there with their friends and family, that's a great example of how a site can be activated without sort of going through the entire life cycle of development. And as we take on this initiative that is focused on the short term, we will be working with large property owners to see what type of interim uses can be placed there to sort of transform these sites in the next 2 to 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Atul. The next question, what work is being done requiring the closure of portions of Executive Boulevard? How long will portions be closed? So this question references the county's work on the White Flint West workaround, which is realigning the street grid on the western portion of White Flint, which will realign Old Georgetown Road and Executive Boulevard. So several new streets will be extended to promote greater connectivity to some of these larger blocks. So Grand Park Avenue, set from Pike and Rose, will be extended south to the Marriott Conference Center, and Old Georgetown Road will connect directly with Town Road. So I believe that the latest update from MCDOT is that Executive Boulevard between Marinelli Road and Old Georgetown Road will be closed later this month, and they hope to open the extension of Grand Park Avenue from Old Georgetown Road down to Marinelli Road sometime next spring or summer. And so another question that we've received here that I will ask Todd Foley-King to answer. What are the plans for the former White Flint Mall site?
Thank you, Walker. The White Flint Mall, the owners of the White Flint Mall in 2011 received a sketch plan entitlement, which is the presentation of a concept for that site for approval by the planning board, and that 2011 sketch plan was approved by the board. It was consistent with the vision of the 2010 plan in terms of the density of building space, the heights of those buildings, calling for a more fine street grid through that site. Since that time, that development has not moved forward, and I think there's a fairly extensive history as to why and what has been going on that people can find by looking that site up on the internet. That said, at this point going forward, we are not able to speak for the property owner, but as the county, we would look to guide development of that site in the way that again is consistent with the 2010 plan in terms of types of uses, size of buildings, type of street grid that we'd see there, and would continue to play that role.
Excellent, thank you. So our next question which I'll direct to Natasha, is the Ballston corridor in Arlington an inspiration for the Pike District? They've been very successful.
Yes, of course. Like through our initiative, we will study different successful corridors. Ballston is one of them. 14th Street on DC is another one. These corridors, they are always like inspirational toward our study, and we are trying to work on through the SHA and MCDOT to kind of like create a vision that has been implemented for the sector plan, having the on-street parking, wide sidewalks, green buffer between the sidewalk and the vehicular traffic, streetscape amenity. All of these are great elements that can create a complete street that can be used for all users, bikers, cyclists, pedestrian, as well as the vehicular traffic. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So this next question we received from R. Patchen. In 2000, Rockville Pike was ranked in the top 10 of retail corridors in the US. Where does it rank today, and what is the projection with completion of this plan? So I think that Rockville Pike has changed a lot in the last 2 decades. Many of the former suburban style shopping centers, as we mentioned, are converting into more mixed uses that support both office and residential. So I'm not familiar with that exact statistic, but I think we will definitely look into that and try to get an understanding of how the Pike District has evolved compared to its competitors or its peers in other areas. And part of our efforts in this project will be to look at sites nationally that have really successfully achieved transformative development around mass transit and really take some lessons that have been learned from those developments and apply it to White Flint and the Pike District. So the next question, which I'll direct to Carrie Sanders, schools in the Walter Johnson cluster, especially Walter Johnson High School, are extremely overcrowded. Woodward opening is now delayed for at least another year. What is being done to open additional elementary schools? Several Board of Education candidates are advocating the removal of existing school boundaries. Where will this development send the children, especially elementary school children?
Thank you, Walker. As we all know, school capacity is a really important issue, and I'm really glad that this question was brought up. The county has always had a policy to pace development with the provision of school capacity. So we actually do have a policy that is adopted by our county council every few years that outlines how schools capacity will be met with new development that is built in the county. And often that would result sometimes in some portions of the county going into what we call a moratorium, where development can't happen until school construction or school funding is provided. Right now, we are actually in the process of working through that policy and updating it. And we expect to be bringing that policy to the county council this fall for adoption. And that would then go into effect January 1st of 2021. So to answer the question, this is something that is a continual balance that has to happen with new development coming in and providing the school capacity. And that's something that we have to consistently look at with each development that comes in both the Pike District, but in other parts of the county as well. And it is an important question. And I think that the revision of this policy that is happening right now is likely going to result in the provision of schools, but also making sure that needed development comes to the area. Because as we know, that development is so important to create jobs, create housing, and create other needs that are important to the residents of Montgomery County and the visitors, as well as the workers.
Thank you, Carrie. So the next question, which I'll direct to Atul. Building taller buildings is very expensive. Are there any plans to incentivize these higher density developments near the WMATA station?
Thank you, Walker. Again, that's a very great question. The WMATA site is indeed the very heart of the Pike District, since it is tied directly to the train station, which is one of the greatest transportation assets for this area. Currently, as per the sector plan, the WMATA site does have a large amount of density and height allotted to it. I would say that working with the property owners and WMATA as a part of our economic development analysis, we will be talking to them and really trying to get a handle on what type of incentives are best suited to meet their needs as they try to develop their properties. And if there are certain types of incentives that are directly related to allowing taller buildings which require concrete construction, we can certainly explore that and try to make some recommendations for consideration by the county agencies and the planning board. At this moment in time, I'm not aware of any financial incentives you get for building taller structures. These discussions are also greatly, I think, affected by the pandemic that we are going through. One of the concerns that we've been hearing from a lot of developers in the area is that the construction costs have been astronomically high because of the very sort of constrained labor market in the region and nationally. The pandemic might change all that. So I think going forward, we'll have to have one-on-one conversations with property owners and developers and really try to get a much more nuanced understanding of what incentives we as a planning department can provide them that will really enable them to move forward with their plans. Thank you.
Thanks, Atul. So the next question, which I will answer, is the plan to have capital bike share docks still, or will the focus be more oriented towards non-docked bikes and scooters? I think this is a fantastic question, and it's something that the transportation industry is really been grappling with for the last few years. We saw dockless bikes and e-scooters become immensely popular, but they do also have problems regarding safety and cluttering sidewalks and travelways. So this is an open question. I think we'll be reaching out to Capital Bike Share. We'll certainly be working with MCDOT. Their commuter services section oversees the expansion of Capital Bike Share and docked bikes in the county. MCDOT also recently revised their transportation demand management strategy, which has certain requirements for medium and large businesses, which especially will be impactful around transit stations. But this is an open question and one that we'll try to address and get a better handle on through this project. For the next question, which I'll direct to Todd Foley-King, so many projects have been approved but haven't moved forward. Generally, why not?
Thank you, Walker. I think answering that question is actually a big focus of our team, and I'd say at this point in time, we're not ready to give a definitive statement as to why or why not. We're still trying to work through the challenges and obstacles and opportunities here in the Pike District. One challenge that we have seen across the region and was discussed briefly by my colleague Atul, the cost of construction has jumped dramatically in the past 10 years, partly a factor of the very tight labor market and also partly a factor of rising commodity costs that go into the cost of building. That has made it hard to make construction feasible in much of America, not just here in the Pike District. But again, that is a central question that our team is asking, and we're in the process of answering that. And I'd say something that we hope to have a more definitive answer to as we go forward with this project.
Thanks, Todd. So the next question, which I'll direct to Atul, several of the businesses at Pike and Rose and other Pike District businesses have closed permanently, leaving many storefronts empty. And this was pre-COVID. Was this being planned to help businesses survive? Or what is planned to help businesses survive?
Again, this is a great question and a very timely question. Retail in general has been struggling, as we all know, where brick and mortar stores are trying to compete with online alternatives. In the county, this is not unique to the Pike District, where retail has been sort of opening and closing. What I would say is that what we can help in ways we control. So as a planning department, we don't necessarily end up creating financial incentives for businesses to run and operate. But what we do is as a part of this project, we will be working on placemaking activities throughout the area. I think having a strong public realm is a very important component for having good retail, especially in today's world where you can do all your commodity shopping online and people really go into the real world to have sort of good retail experiences. Now, COVID has changed all of that in a very dramatic way. So we'll all be looking into crystal balls to answer this question. But when we do the placemaking event that Natasha was talking about in the spring, I think one of our focuses is going to be to work with local and small businesses during that event to give them a platform to sort of show their sort of goods and services within the context of an event where we'll try to attract a lot of people to come. And we'll also work with small businesses, just like we did in the placemaking festival at Randolph Hills, to maybe create some collateral for them, whether it is branding material, and work with Chris Warner and her team to generate some maybe kits that they can use to promote themselves online. All these are things I think we're going to have to get very creative about and implement as we come out of this pandemic and really try to get our small businesses and local businesses to operate successfully again. Thank you.
Thanks, Atul. So the next question, which I'll handle, Pike and Rose was built from scratch but has no dedicated bike lanes. Will future development be required to provide bike lanes on new roads? So the short answer is the bicycle master plan that was approved in 2018 does provide recommendations for bicycle facilities, whether it is a bike lane on street or a shared use path or an off-street trail. So developments are required to follow the recommendations included in that bicycle master plan. I will note that within the 2010 White Flint Sector Plan, there were no bike lanes on the interior of what became Pike and Rose. There were shared use paths along Rockville Pike, Town Road, and Old Georgetown Road, and some of those have been provided where we have wider sidewalks for both bicyclists and pedestrians to kind of coexist. But in the actual White Flint Sector Plan, there were no bicycle lanes recommended in the internal section of Pike and Rose, which is intended to have kind of smaller, narrower streets so that people, bicycles, and cars can feel more comfortable to move around at a safer and slower rate. So this next question, which I'll direct to Todd, have you done any formal or informal surveys of property owners to find out why they haven't developed their properties as envisioned by the White Flint Sector Plan? What have you learned about why this development hasn't happened?
That's a great question, and it is that exact type of outreach is a key part of our work plan. We have not been able to do that outreach as of yet, in part because of the restrictions that came up as a result of the pandemic. I will say that we are adjusting and are taking that in stride and are anticipating that we will soon have conversations with property owners and developers specifically for that exact purpose, to better understand what obstacles they've faced, what opportunities they see.
Thanks, Todd. So just a few more questions, and then we're going to review the survey results. But I'll turn this next one to Carrie. Is the current moratorium slowing down redevelopment in the Pike District?
So this is definitely a question that we receive often all over the county, really, as it relates to what I had discussed before. We have a policy called the subdivision staging policy, which is a tool that the county uses to ensure that essential public facilities such as schools or transportation keep in pace with development. And it's essentially the county's infrastructure adequacy test that they use, and it's updated every 4 years. So the one that's currently in place, which, like I said, will be updated this fall through the county council process, it is placing a residential moratorium issue. So when residential development comes to the Pike District for review, it is subject to limits based on how much that development may generate in terms of new students into schools. So residential development is not proceeding in the Pike District right now because of that. If it's over a certain number of units, which is very small, over 3 units, it's not proceeding. Now, commercial development, such as office space, is proceeding. So that office space development can be reviewed and is not affected by the schools test, as we call it. So yeah, it's definitely something that the county's looking at through this revision of the subdivision staging policy, and we understand that, you know, it's important to have adequate school capacity, and it's also important to provide housing and provide job centers. So it's definitely a balance that we're trying to work through. You know, with this revision, we're hoping that we can kind of have a good path forward.
Carrie, your comments about office space were quite prescient. Our next question, office space, and this will be directed to Natasha. Office space is taking a big hit right now due to COVID concerns. What will happen to all of the designed office space if workers need to work from home or remotely for the near future?
Thank you, Walker. So office uses are very similar to retail, as my colleague Atul was mentioning, due to like online services and more people are working from home. And unfortunately, due to this COVID-19 pandemic that happens, like we all have to be work from home now. So there's always a question about office uses, the similar for the retail. So it has been a lot of discussion through the developers of the capacity of the offices and also converting those office buildings. We've seen a lot of examples in Arlington and DC that the developer have purchased or transferred, kind of transformed the office building into condos or different type of uses or apartments. So we see that transition might happen even more after we get out of this pandemic. Thank you, Walker.
Thanks, Natasha. So the next question, and this will be the second to last question that we take, I will answer this one. Is there a timeline for changing the Old Georgetown Road and Rockville Pike intersection you spoke about earlier? Yes, so I believe this question refers to the White Flint Station Metro access improvements. These improvements are being completed by NCDOT, hopefully within the next 2 years, and completed sometime in 2023. So the closing of the channelized right turns at the intersection of Old Georgetown Road and Rockville Pike are expected to be one of the final pieces of this project. So that's probably closer to 2022, 2023. The first piece of this project will be the sidewalks and the landscape buffers along Rockville Pike between Old Georgetown Road and the metro station. And NCDOT hopes to start making progress on that later this year or next year, although I'll note that there could be some changes to that schedule based on the pandemic. So one final question now before we transition to the survey results, and I'll direct this question to Atul. To have tall buildings, you need demand from tenants to pay premium rents. Has any other place in the county developed as tall as White Flint is envisioned?
Thank you, Walker. I think that's another great question. There are certainly other places within the county that have developed tall buildings. Bethesda, for example, certainly has buildings similar in height. So do some of the newer structures in Silver Spring. When the planning board recently approved the minor master plan amendment for Grosvenor, which also has similarly tall buildings just down the pike from White Flint. I think one of the great things that the Pike District has going for it is that it already has significant transit infrastructure in place. So usually when we see these tall buildings that demand a high premium in terms of rent, they are located in transit-rich areas. And this is why we believe that the foundational elements of the White Flint Plan are so strong, because it is building on having metro there by adding BRT to the mix and having a high limit on heights and density in core properties, that we really think we can, in fact, achieve those types of developments that are being referenced in the question. Thank you.
Thanks, Atul. So now, as promised, we will briefly review the results of the community meeting survey that we posted earlier. I'd just like to thank everyone for your participation. We got some great feedback and results. So the first question: what improvements would you most like to see in White Flint within the next 3 years? And so for this question, it looked like the predominant answer was closing streets to cars so people can bike, walk, and exercise safely. About 35% of people in favor of this. And this is a trend that we're seeing globally right now. Many European cities have announced massive expansion to their bike and pedestrian networks to take advantage of the lower level of vehicular activity. Even in America, Seattle has announced they're closing certain streets. So this is something that we hope to consider related to the pandemic, but also in the future, maybe reducing capacity on certain roads where that demand is not needed if we do not see a return to pre-COVID congestion levels on our major roadways. Number 2, what improvements would make you feel more comfortable walking in White Flint? And the number 1 response here was landscape buffers separating pedestrians from traffic. Approximately 40% of you supported that answer, and that's great because that's something that the planning department is already incorporating in every large development in the Pike District and in the county, really. We'd like to see a minimum of 6 feet of a landscape buffer from higher volume roadways, tree plantings, heavy landscaping elements. These are all things that make it safer and more comfortable for people to walk. So it's great to see that the responses back this up. Number 3, what would make you visit White Flint more often? The top 2 responses here: additional public events like festivals or shows, and safer and more comfortable sidewalks. So there, as I mentioned earlier, there are a number of many dedicated park and public open spaces in White Flint, some of which are more activated than others, but we're going to be working closely with the Parks Department to encourage events such as festivals or shows on these green areas, and of course we also encourage that with our private developments as well. And again, we see support for safer and more comfortable sidewalks, which again is a priority of this project. Number 4, what temporary uses would you like to see on empty sites in White Flint? As we've noted, there are several major sites that have been empty for many years. And I think everyone would like to see those sites activated in an appropriate response. Ultimately, with high density, maybe residential or office space, but in the interim, we may have opportunities to introduce lower density uses that are more temporary, but could still potentially activate the site and provide services and amenities that residents desire. So here, the clear winners are beer garden and community art space. We've seen this happen in a lot of other areas within the region and globally. In NOMA, as Todd mentioned in his presentation, there are several beer gardens that have occupied empty parcels before development was really ready. And in Tyson's, we saw examples of not necessarily community art space, but art facilities where I believe a Cirque du Soleil set up on an empty site. In the Navy Yard in Washington, D.C., Trapeze School set up on one of the empty sites. It was recently moved as that site is being prepared for a larger office building. Number 5, what recreational activities would you like to see in parks and open space in White Flint? 50% of the respondents support jogging and running paths. And I think this coincides very closely with our first question, which also gained a lot of support, closing streets to cars so people can walk, run, and bike, especially during these times when social distancing is encouraged. We're finding the benefit of having more wider sidewalks and areas to be outside, but still be a little removed other mask-wearing citizens. And I'd also note that Montgomery Parks has actually closed several roads in the county during this pandemic, 2 open streets on the weekends for people to walk, run, and bike. And this is allowing people to kind of really handle this, this difficult pandemic situation in a more comfortable manner. Number 6, how do you typically travel to the White Flint Metro Station? To see almost 50% of respondents here walk to the station. Some of our preliminary research indicated that within 3 miles, the majority of the residents, the majority of people that are traveling to the metro station live within 3 miles. So any way that we can encourage people to travel to the metro station by walking, biking, even an e-scooter, we would like to facilitate that. So it's fantastic that so many of you walk to the Metro. I'm sure this represents pre-pandemic periods as Metro's ridership has dropped dramatically due to the pandemic, but it's great to see that there is such a strong culture of walking that exists in White Flint. And the last question, I would be more likely to travel without a car in White Flint if. And again, it's great to see support for a range of different transportation options here. So the first one, with about 1/3 of the responses, Metro Rail and buses run more frequently. With the extension of the Red Line service from Grosvenor to Shady Grove that was made last year, frequency on the Metro Rail Red Line did increase during peak periods. So hopefully that will allow people to access downtown Washington, D.C. or Rockville more frequently via Metro. It looks like there's also strong support for a circulator bus connecting the Metro station with neighborhood destinations. So maybe if you could drop in the comments, what destinations in White Flint would you specifically like to reach from the Metro station? We're aware of many, but we want to be sure that we have the input from the community as well, so we don't miss anything when we're considering these options. And lastly, a protected bicycle network is completed. As I mentioned earlier, the bicycle master plan really lays the groundwork for the expansion of the bikeway network in White Flint. And as redevelopment occurs, we hope to fill in the gap on those bikeways. Our partners at MCDOT have done a fantastic job of making progress here in White Flint. There are dedicated bike lanes on Wood Glen Road. Bike lanes just opened on Executive Boulevard between Nicholson Lane and Wood Glen Drive. And then on Marinelli Road, east of Rockville Pike, MCDOT hopes to start construction on bike lanes on each side of the street later this year. So they are slowly but surely making progress towards completing that goal of a protected bicycle network. So it's great to see support from that for the community. So that is the end of our presentation here. I'd like to thank all of our presenters, both Montgomery Planning staff, but especially Councilmember Friedson, Amy Ginsberg, and Chris Warner. We really appreciate you all joining this presentation. If there were questions or comments that were not answered, please feel free to email me directly. My email address is listed here, and we also encourage you to comment and engage with your fellow community members via the Pike District React map, which is linked on screen and will be shared in the comments section. So thank you all again. We hope you will continue to stay engaged with the Advancing the Pike District initiative. Have a fantastic night.